It's a real thing now.
OG, big fish. We the ones that you wanna get with. Took a couple L's, rung a couple bells. Real ones, too legit for coin tell. Straight shooters.
Wait, hold up. They messed up my camera.
See a nice little thing, we pursue her. See a nice little, yeah. I'm moving with a purpose, bigger than a service. You can never even if
there we go.
We own it.
Make sure the audio's right.
Big difference, that's worthless, yes. All we do is impress. Put the work in, never mind all the stress. And you don't mind tests when you better than the rest. OG 101, it was all in the prep. Yeah, we some legends in the game. If you're scared to embrace it, then how you gonna change? Yeah, everyone want to range, but the value that you bring, little boy, smart change. I'm just saying, that's life, man. You control your destiny simply with your mind frame. You go hard from the gate, every day clean slate. And patience is a privilege, I ain't got so I wait. OG, big fish, we the ones that you wanna get with. Took a couple L's, rung a couple bells. Real ones, too legit for coin teller.
Straight shooters, all troopers. Me and the guys ain't never been fooled.
See a nice little thing, we pursue her. See a nice little thing, we pursue her. Yeah.
Let it play. Let it play. Let it play. Let it play. Was about to hit y'all with the Grand Rising, but no. Just one is enough. Just one is enough. Good evening to all. Good evening to all. Peace, prosperity, and all that other good stuff, right? More life, more blessings, more balance, all that good stuff. We're originally planning on going on at 9, and the reason why I'm upstairs and not in the studio, just got back to wherever I'm at today, and went down to the studio, and of course the internet wasn't working, so we'll be upstairs for today and maybe on Friday as well. But we adapt, we figure it out, and we move along. So I'm not going to play around with y'all. I'm going to get right to it. We got a bunch of stuff to discuss. This is probably going to be one of the more informative shows. And when I say informative, really, as I'm looking through the schedule, we're going to start off with some scripture. Then we're going to go into exactly how Israel was created. I realized that we watched the video on where the split came, with Abraham, and where this forever beef started between Jews and Muslims, or at least between maybe Israel and Palestine, however you want to look at it. And I think it's important for us to understand exactly how Israel was created. And I want us to approach it from a standpoint that whether you're Israeli, Palestinian, they're all our brothers and sisters. All right. The only thing that can solve any of these issues, in my opinion, is what we like to call, or I can't even say what we like to call, the Baha'i faith. And I'm sure a lot of others call this oneness, community. In other words, God, our connection to each other. And it's funny. I even was having a conversation on the beach earlier where it's, unless you believe in oneness, then you're always going to be in a space where you're prioritizing one group over another and one dominant identity. All right. We talked about that a lot before. I think I brought up the conversation that I had with my big bro, Pete, where it's like, what is your dominant identity? What do you identify as? Do you identify as Black, white, Puerto Rican, lesbian, gay, trans? Do you identify as he, all these different identities that seem to take precedent over our identity as just human beings. All of these other identities, when we prioritize those above our identity as human beings, which in all actuality should almost be considered ungodly by prioritizing those other things, right? We should prioritize the godliness and our godly connection to each other, which would be oneness, right? That would be honoring God. And it's so funny how a lot of the religious groups, not spiritual groups, a lot of the religious groups, those seem to be the ones that divide us the most, when religion is supposed to be a spiritual connection. It's supposed to enhance our spiritual connection to God. And the only way, in my opinion, to enhance our spiritual connection to God is to understand what exactly all of this means as far as our godly connection to each other. Right? It would seem to me that one of the ways to enhance our relationship with God is to be peaceful and live in harmony with the rest of God's children. Right? To create a society that encourages that rather than encouraging turmoil, encouraging war, and encouraging a lot of these other things that we've justified, condoned under the name of religion. So when we just look at it from that standpoint, I just want us to be reminded that sometimes our brothers, sometimes our sisters do certain things to where they may be misled for different reasons. They may be misled to a point where they think that they are 100% right on something. They think that it's in them to seek vengeance. They need to get a particular level of get back. They feel something's entitled to them or owed to them, that they're entitled to certain things, that they're seeing things clearly and in a godly manner, when in all actuality, sometimes they're not. Sometimes we're all not. Sometimes we all need to be reminded by either a friend or maybe somebody that's not a friend that just says, yo, you bugging. So us talking about these situations, the only way for us to make sure, at least for me to make sure, that I'm aligning all of the processing that I do with breaking down a lot of these topics, I have to remind myself that, hey, if we're all one, then both sides are my brothers and sisters, both sides. And that's the only way for us to actually get to a peaceful resolution in all of this. Now, if everybody's going to adopt that mindset, I don't know. A lot of people may say, hey, bro, good luck with that, but it's never going to happen. I don't know. I've seen a lot of kids that have absolutely no shot of making it to the NFL or the NBA, have them and their delusional parents confidently believing that they will. So at least I'm going to confidently believe in some type of delusion that at least brings about world peace or something of the likes, right? So neither here nor there. Don't mind me. That's just my opinion. Good evening, Maya, coming through, supporting your man by yourself. Ain't a lot of people in here. Well, we're gonna get to it. We are gonna get to it. Let's the first video that I want to show you. So I think is it the Barbados Prime Minister and Netanyahu have an interesting exchange at the United Nations over the selective use of certain Bible scriptures. So let me share that and we'll get things going. All right. Let me see. Make sure you guys can see it. All right. Yeah. It's the wind down today. All right. Let me chill over here. Remove Maya. I don't want you involved in this. Move your comment. All right. Listen to this. This was an interesting exchange. Netzach
Yisrael lo yishaker. The eternity of Israel will not falter.
It is the same Bible that tells us in the stories of the Old Testament.
Wait, hold on.
As the book of Samuel says in the Bible, Netzach Yisrael lo yishaker. The eternity of Israel will not falter.
It is the same Bible that tells us in the stories of the Old Testament, much which has guided many people across this world. But when we turn from the Old Testament to the New Testament, it is Romans that says to us, vengeance is mine, saith the Lord, not any country, not any human being. So that the Bible can't be used as a convenient aid when it suits us and rejected when it doesn't. Mr. President, above all else, we need a global reset on peace. There needs to be global peace. And those of us who are old enough would have recognized that there are peaks and valleys as it relates to this issue of conflict. There are few areas where the world is more in need of the United Nations acting as the United Nations to secure the objectives of the Charter than in the area of peace and security. The silence that has engulfed Sudan is unacceptable and may well be rooted in the race.
All right, y'all know what I want to talk about first. This is a prime example of how we go about, in my opinion, being tricked out, being tricked into using religion to justifying ungodly things. Here, Netanyahu started off with the Old Testament, which aligns, or you can say is the Torah, which is the Jewish book, Jewish scripture. But then she responded and pretty much said what we've been talking about a lot, and it actually hits on a few different points. And it's funny, I was telling my bro Pete, because there's certain faiths that believe that what we were talking about on the last show, that all these different religions just came at different times. So they're solving different problems because a religion is solving the particular issues of that day and time. So therefore you can't have a religion solve a problem in this area and be specific as far as the ways that is going to go about solving it. And the reason why I say that is because, yeah, you can have a rule, the golden rule, treat others the way that you want to be treated. And that can apply to everything, right? And that solve everything. But if you're going to break it down and have something more specific, like a lot of the scriptures, then it's almost impossible to have a book that was meant to solve this problem of this day and age and to use it word for word to solve the problems of this current day and age. It just doesn't make sense. And then what you're doing is you're giving man the power to pretty much change God's words, because now you're applying a certain interpretation that was meant for 1,000 years ago and what we were facing in society for that to now be the solution presented as what we're going to turn to now. It gives man too much power, to be totally honest. And we've seen exactly what happens when man uses God's name and uses religion and spirituality to flex and to cause destruction and all this other evil across the world that we see, all to seek power, greed, and all the things that man has grown accustomed to seeking when it comes to this power structure. I don't know, however you want to describe it. However you want to describe it. It just doesn't make sense. But to her point, she's saying that, listen, that's what it says in the Old Testament. And I'm going to play it again, what she said. That's what's said in the Old Testament. And a lot of our leaders, this is how I interpret what she said. A lot of y'all been running around interpreting stuff and doing certain things based on the Old Testament. But there's a reason why there's a New Testament. There's a reason why we had to have an upgrade, an updated system to live life by. Because in the example that she gave with Romans is what? Let's go to the scripture. She said that Romans, the verse you're referring to is from the book of Romans in the New Testament of the Bible. The full passage is, dearly beloved, avenge not yourselves, but rather give place unto wrath, for it is written, vengeance is mine. I will repay, say the Lord. Vengeance is not for a man, a mortal, a human being to give. We're seeing in real time what it looks like when man seeks vengeance. Are you seeking vengeance, or are you using the disguise of vengeance to get Gaza? Or is it really about the vengeance? And man is not responsible enough to seek vengeance. This is just what the books say. I'm not even religious. I'm not Christian, and I'm not Jewish, but this is what your book says. So are we living by the book, or are we not living by the book? Or are we only living by the book when it makes sense to, as far as producing a result that's favorable to my group? And this is why I say it's so childish. These religions nowadays are super childish. I'm to the point where I believe now that religion, as presently constructed, is probably the most demonic thing that we have on earth. I'm really to that point. Now, do some people take religion and use it for positive? Absolutely. Absolutely. I got one of my little bros who works with OG. He uses it exceptionally well. He's a Catholic, I believe, has a great relationship with God. Cool. But we've seen how these religions can abuse the power of God. We see that. We see how if we're saying that we're a part of this particular group, how are we not standing by the instructions that God gives? And this is why they do not make it a requirement for you to read the Bible in order to say you're a Christian. Think about that. Wouldn't that be a bare minimum? See, if I was a pastor, maybe I'll become a pastor just so I could start this trend. Hopefully it won't be a trend, but maybe insert some common sense into religion where it says, hey, before you actually say that you're a Christian, before you accept Jesus Christ as your Lord and Savior, however the wording is, before you get baptized, before you join this group, you actually have to read the book. Wouldn't that make sense for you to have to do your independent investigation and understand what you're committing to before you actually? It's like when you join a sorority or a frat. I've seen the goofiness in, the reason why I'd say it's goofy, and let me not even get into that. You got to recite every little thing from a sorority and a frat. Like you can recite that more than you recite anything from the scripture of the religion that you supposedly live by and have given your life to. So you're more passionate and more bought into a college sorority or a college fraternity than you are with who you're accepting as your Lord and Savior. Does that make any sense? This is the world that we live in. Like, common sense just completely goes out the window when it comes to religion. It completely goes out the window. I'm going to play what she said again. I'm going to plug my phone in, and then we'll go from there. I'll play both of them so you can hear Netanyahu, what he said initially, and then hear the Barbados Prime Minister.
As the book of Samuel says in the Bible, Netzach Yisrael lo yishaker. The eternity of Israel will not falter.
It is the same Bible that tells us in the stories of the Old Testament, much which has guided many people across this world. But when we turn from the Old Testament to the New Testament, it is Romans that says to us, vengeance is mine, saith the Lord, not any country, not any human being. So that the Bible can't be used as a convenient aid when it suits us and rejected when it doesn't.
Whew. Oh yeah, make sure that y'all are liking and subscribing. That's going to help boost the algorithm, all that good stuff. All right, let's did this load? All right, let's get into the video that I was telling y'all about. But this just constant examples. And there's a reason why. At first, I told y'all a couple of weeks ago, like, I'm just done talking about this. And some of the reasons, as we'll discuss during the show, especially when we see how Trump's behaving, it just makes me like, this is the most, I don't know if disappointing is the word, but it is disappointing. Trump, one of the biggest letdowns, I don't know if y'all are familiar with what he decided to do with FEMA, where, and we'll talk about it a little bit later, but they tried to put something out where if cities or states or people decided to not work with Israeli companies as a way to boycott or just not to work with Israeli companies because they don't want to do business with them anymore, Trump and his administration they put something out that said that you would lose your FEMA recovery. They changed it. But the fact that they even put that out there, I've never been as convinced as I am now that America is not ran by. Hold on. My dad told me America is not run by. See, Dad, I listen. America is not run by Americans. America is not run by Americans. The Israeli government or Israel is prioritized by America. Maybe even if you say that America's run by Americans, whoever's running it prioritizes Israel. Like some of the stuff that is done, it's like you're willing to do all this for a foreign country, but you don't even do that for the American citizens. It's insane. We'll get into it. We'll get into it. But we're just pointing out issues. We're pointing out issues. We're pointing out issues. And if I was somebody that was getting if I was somebody that was getting an advantage, an unfair advantage, I would want people to let me know. I would want people, if I was living a particular way of life that was hypocritical to the life that I'm acting as if I'm living. Let me give you an example. Let me just make that real specific. If I'm acting as if I'm this godly person and I'm moving in a way and killing hundreds of thousands of people and justifying it with different reasons. Oh, well, it's this war. No, Israel's doing a great job. They've killed less people than in World War II. As if that's the state. Oh, okay. So we're good as long as we don't kill that many people. All over the place. All right, let me I thought it was important for us to understand exactly how Israel was created. So that's the tab that I want to open up and share with you all. And I want us to go through this. I want us to go through this because a lot of these conversations come down to whether or not this conflict started on October 7th, or if it started 70 years ago, if it started thousands of years ago. Perhaps us uncovering exactly how this came about will give us some understanding on the perspectives of some of the people involved. And we're all involved because humanity. So let's get into this video.
On November 2nd, 1917, Britain's Foreign Secretary Arthur Balfour wrote a letter that would set off a conflict still being fought more than 100 years later.
His Majesty's government view with favour the establishment in Palestine of a national home for the Jewish people and will use their best endeavours to facilitate the achievement of this object.
When Balfour wrote of his government's intent to create a Jewish homeland in Palestine, 90% of the people living there were not Jewish. Just 31 years later, most of them were gone.
כמה אתה חושב אנשים הרגת ככה?
לא ספרתי. אני לא יכול לדעת בחיי. היה לי מקלע עם 250 כדורים.
Y'all mind if I go back just a couple? 90% of the people living there were not Jewish.
To create a Jewish homeland in Palestine, 90% of the people living there were not Jewish. Just 31 years later, most of them were gone.
כמה אתה חושב אנשים הרגת ככה?
לא ספרתי. אני לא יכול לדעת בחיי. היה לי מקלע עם 250 כדורים.
This is the story of
I understand how some people may have awkward laughs and stuff like that, but it's hard to look at that last clip where he's asked how many non-Israelis that he killed to obviously get the land going from 90% of the people being there, not Israel, to that completely turning around, what they say about 30 years later. And they ask him how many people he's killed, and he's kind of laughing about it. Look, I've never been to the army and killed people, so I can't speak from experience, but anything that makes people laugh at the loss of human life, like how he just did, how can that be associated with God? I just don't understand.
the British promise that led to the destruction of Palestine and the creation of the State of Israel. Let's start with the obvious question. Why were the British making promises about other people's countries? The short answer: empire is one hell of a drug. This was World War I, and the British were making lots of promises. In addition to promising a Jewish homeland in Palestine, they promised Arab leaders independence if they rose up against Britain's enemy, the Ottoman Empire. The Arabs did. Hollywood even made a movie about it.
Arabia's for the Arabs now. That's what I've told them anyway. That's what they think. That's why they're fighting.
Oh, surely.
A month after Balfour's letter, British troops took Palestine, ending 400 years of Ottoman rule. The people who lived there were Arabs, mostly Muslims, but there were Christian and Jewish minorities too. There was also a tiny number of European Jews who in the late 1800s had started building small colonies there. At a time when many Jews were suffering horrific persecution in Europe, they felt Palestine could be an escape. The idea of building up a Jewish presence in Palestine became known as Zionism, but it stayed a fringe movement among European Jews. Many of them felt they shouldn't have to leave their countries to avoid persecution. But Zionism as a political movement took a big step forward with an Austrian man called Theodor Herzl. And this guy is a very important name in this story. In 1896, he published Der Judenstaat, or in English, The Jewish State. In it, he said the only way for Jews to avoid Europe's anti-Semitism was not just to leave, but to have their own country. And Herzl didn't just write. The next year, he organized a conference in Basel, Switzerland, the first Zionist Congress. The attendees agreed on a program which sought, among other things, to establish a Jewish homeland in Palestine and promote Jewish settlement in Palestine. From here on out, the Zionist movement became very active, setting up funds to promote Jewish immigration to Palestine, companies to buy land there, and recruiting representatives to advocate for their cause with different governments. A few days after the conference, Herzl wrote this in his diary.
At Basel, I founded the Jewish state. In 5 years perhaps, and certainly in 50 years, everyone will perceive it.
He was only off by 1 year. Okay, so that is a lot of history, but it's important because the Zionist movement is a critical part of the story going forward, especially after it found a friend in the British government, where a lot of high-ranking...
So I'm not stopping really to say much, but I just want to make sure that everybody, this is a lot of history being thrown our way. And even me, I'm listening to this the second time, and it's still a lot. It's still a lot, but my main takeaway is like, how you gonna set up something to give away somebody else's land? Like, that's like me promising somebody else's stuff. Like, yo, I got a bunch of this. Let's say I got a bunch of gold, and somebody I want to, hey, you should have some gold, but you're not going to take my gold. We'll get you somebody else's gold. It's like, I don't know. It brings about certain things. And this is a conversation that we were having, I think that we touched on the last show, where it seems like a lot of these other countries did not want Jewish people there. And like Britain, they decided to promise them land in Israel because they did not want them in their country. So therefore, they just said, you know what, just give them that land. So what if you got to kill off a bunch of Palestinians, remove a bunch of doesn't matter. We'll give them that land. We're in control of it anyway. Why? Because we colonized it. We colonized it. Now, we know that the Brits have no trace of ancestry to Palestine, with the exception of the argument, if you want to say, well, we all came from Africa and then we did. Y'all get what I'm saying, right? There wasn't a lot of Brits in that Palestine or Northern African region, Middle Eastern region. But it's, they decided to make a move to give away somebody else's land. And what is colonization? Just like we wanted to free ourselves from Britain. How can we understand how, as Americans, as the colonies, we wanted to free ourselves from Britain, but then we have no understanding of the Palestinians not only wanted to free themselves from their colonizers, but also to free themselves and to get back what was taken from them by their colonizers, and who their colonizer promised that they can give their land to. Like, it just doesn't seem like we can see things so clearly on one end. We can celebrate some of our American soldiers and people that stood up for our country, fighting for our independence, right? But then we look over there and we say that the people doing the same exact thing to land that they were entitled to way more than Americans. I don't see how you can say Europeans are entitled to America, but we look at them as terrorists, people that are trying to fight for the land that they've had and have been on for a very long time. But they're the terrorists, and Americans, y'all know, we're the heroes of the world, right? We're the heroes of the world. We're going to celebrate Christopher Columbus. We're going to celebrate Independence Day. That's just the energy that we're on. So let's keep going.
Officials supported Zionism, sometimes for unexpected reasons. Prime Minister Lloyd George, for example, was a Christian zealot who believed gathering the Jewish people in Palestine would bring Jesus Christ back to earth. Others, like Balfour, believed that getting the Jewish people out of Europe and into their own country would be a good thing. Herzl was pretty visionary when he wrote that the anti-Semitic nations will become our allies. Meanwhile, the Zionists assured Britain that their future country would be
the anti-Semitic, hold on, did y'all hear that? The anti-Semitic nations will become our allies. That's what I was mentioning. That's what I was talking about when I said that all these countries that did not want Jewish people to be in their countries, they now became their allies. Why? It's like, oh yeah, we'll set you up. You won't be our issue anymore. But yeah, we'll support you over there. We'll support you over there.
Allies. Meanwhile, the Zionists assured Britain that their future country would be a reliable ally. So that's the backstory of how European anti-Semitism, Zionism, and British imperialism all led to the Balfour Declaration, this British promise to build a homeland for Jews in Palestine.
This British promise to build a home for Jews in Palestine. This British promise. Hold on, I gotta hear that again.
Imperialism all led to the Balfour Declaration, this British promise to build a homeland for Jews in Palestine.
This British promise to build a homeland for Jews in Palestine. And we're still thinking that this conflict started on October 7th. Like, we got to call a spade a spade. We got to stop. See, us being too scared to call out what is right in front of our face has led us to this delusional state where I just go back to this times of slavery where parents probably just told their kids any and everything so their kids wouldn't ask questions, because you ask questions as a slave and you get beat, right? You can't ask questions. You ask questions about certain things now, you lose your job. You'll lose opportunities, right? Or at least that's the threat of us not, That's what we've been indoctrinated with by our parents. I told y'all the other day, I was talking to my parents about this and a few others, and it's like, well, how did we get to this? Well, how we got to this is because you have generation after generation scared to call out what's right in front of our face. And then we have kids that grow up and they're like, yo, this doesn't make any sense to me. Like, you British promise. Let me go back. A British promise to make a homeland for Jews in Palestine. If this is not white supremacy or whatever it is that people like to throw terms out there, colonization. And you know what the problem is? You know what's so funny? Hold on. I got to say this. Let me go ahead and apologize. As a Black American, let me go ahead and apologize to all the Palestinians. I'm apologizing on behalf of all Black Americans, because you know what really has happened? Because so many Black Americans were so passive, and perhaps Native Americans, that's another discussion. Because we were so passive in allowing certain things to happen to us just giving up our land and, hey, it is what it is. We just were cool with it. We don't fight back. We just accept it. Perhaps we were so passive in allowing people to take advantage of us and allowing people to conquer us and to colonize us that they're looking at the Palestinians like they're the problem. Like, what's wrong with these Palestinians? These Negroes, we just conquered them easily. These Native Americans, we just conquered them easily, threw them in some territories that nobody wants to be in anyway. But these damn Palestinians, they're actually fighting for their land. They're fighting us for their land. Like, oh my God, the nerve of these, the nerve of these sand Negroes, right? And I'm being nice by saying Negro. But that's the mindset of a lot of Europeans, it seems like. The nerve of them to think that they can have a land. Nah, first off, we're taking it. Second off, all right, well, we'll just say that God said that, God gave it to us. This is the craziest thing that we've just accepted. And it's because, like I said on the last show, so many of us do what? So many of us do what? We turn the other cheek. We don't have enough information to know what's really going on. Could you imagine people during slavery? They probably use that same excuse. Oh, well, you ask somebody up north, how you feel about slavery? Well, I don't have enough information. You ask a white Southerner who doesn't own slaves, how you feel? Like, you think that this is okay? Well, I don't know. I never had a slave, so I don't know. What do people do right now? When it comes to Israel, Palestine, different things, demonic behaviors, demonic wars that are happening across the world. I don't know enough about that. Well, you comment on everything else. You know enough about the Diddy trial. Don't you think it's important for you to gather some information so you may be able to formulate an opinion on what's going on in the Middle East? Because clearly it's impacting our government. Clearly it's playing a huge role in American life. We're giving our money to them. Might as well learn a little bit about it so you can have a discussion. But people would rather live in blissful ignorance than to get involved in a real conversation. That's what it really comes down to. So let me apologize to the Palestinians, or maybe let me apologize to the Europeans, some of the colonizers. Let me apologize to everybody, because we set a terrible precedent. We set a terrible example of how people behave when you either take them from their homeland or you take somebody else's homeland. And they just don't roll over. So now you think you're going to do the same thing with the Palestinians. Palestinians like, What you thought we was? You thought we was the American Negroes? Nah. So let's keep going. Let's keep going.
Now we're going to look at how Britain did that. World War I had been a conflict between rival empires, and the winners set up the League of Nations to distribute the losing side's territories between them. They called it the Mandate System, putting territories once controlled by the Ottoman and German empires under the, quote, tutelage of advanced nations until they became independent. Britain was given the mandate over Palestine, but the Palestinian people were never asked what they wanted or what independence would look like to them. Listen to what Balfour wrote to one of his colleagues.
For in Palestine we do not propose even to go through the form of consulting the wishes of the present inhabitants of the country.
Instead, it was the Zionists who were...
And let me be very clear. See, a lot of people will say like, hey, we won the war. We got it. Cool. Y'all have heard me say that when it comes to black people. We got conquered. Accept it or do something about it, one or the other. But you got to accept the fact that we got conquered before you do anything from there. At least understand that nobody owes you anything. You were conquered. I'm talking about black people. If we're okay with war, and if we're willing to justify doing certain things to certain people to take things that land, for instance, and just given the reasoning that God gave it to us, it's almost like, just go commit a crime. Are you okay with rape? Are we okay with rape? And, I'm sure a lot of these people that we would maybe say have mental issues, if somebody rapes somebody, grape somebody, I don't want the the stream to get. If somebody does something very vicious to somebody, let me say that, and then they say, hey, I heard these voices in my head. It was God. They told me to do that. You know, kind of similar to what the Bible says. Kind of similar to how the Bible says that when you conquer a land, you know, be respectful, but you could, they didn't say be respectful, but, you know, those women, those are yours. You know, but if you're going to knock her up, you know, marry her. And if you don't want to marry her, then at least send her off on her way and be nice, you know, pay for her lift home. Isn't that what the Bible says? Now we'll look at a person who does something vicious like that and say they're crazy. Oh, they said, and they had the nerve to say that God told them to do that. That's insane. But we don't have that same energy when it comes to Israel. Why? 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 God gave you this land. Are you know what they would have? You know why black people could never get away with this? I feel like there would be, you know what the common response were if black people did something like this? Nigga, please. There needs to be like a nigga, please button. If black people did something like, you know, God told me that this is mine, like, nigga, please. That would be the response. But when Zionists push for it and say God gave us this, how come we all just bend the knee and just say, hey, okay, whatever you need, master, sir, ma'am? I'm just wondering, because I'm sorry, I just got to call a spade a spade. I'm just wondering, what's the difference? How do we allow one, but then energy is different for the other? Like, I just don't get it. And if you are cool with war, and I wanted to start off, the only reason why I paused the video is because I wanted to say, see, once you are okay with war and you justify war for different reasons, no matter what they are. Now, also think back to what we started off today, the show with the Barbados Prime Minister saying that vengeance is not man's, it's God's. So when we justify war, anything's possible. Now, I don't justify war. I think war is evil. I think it's demonic. We need to figure out a different way to solve issues. It is what it is. So because if you justify war, what's war? Do you justify somebody you walking down the street with your lady? And if another guy's walking down the street and they may be a lot bigger, stronger, that maybe they're with another guy. Maybe it's a group of them. Is it okay for them to declare war on you and to just take things from you, take your wife, do whatever with your wife, do whatever with you? Maybe take your kids, take your daughter, do whatever it is that they want to do with her. Is that okay because they have the power to do so? Or should we live by standards that are more godly rather than ones that justify war, which is whoever's stronger, we win, and then we set the rules? What's the difference? One is just on a different scale, a greater scale. So it should be, I mean, I guess if you look at it like that, even considered more demonic than the other. Maybe I'm wrong, though.
Consulted about what their vision for Palestine was, and so the mandate ended up incorporating not just the Balfour Declaration, but several clauses requiring Britain to ensure the establishment of a Jewish home in Palestine. British rule was very accommodating to the Zionist project. The Jewish community in Palestine grew with big waves of immigration. They had their own schools and factories and even their own militia, the Haganah, and they were led by the Polish-born David Ben-Gurion, the leader of their representative body, the Jewish Agency. To the Palestinians, it was clear that Britain wasn't delivering them independence. It was delivering their country to other people. In 1936, they went on strike. British forces tried to break the strike with arrests, torture, mass punishment, and executions. Leaders were exiled, weapons confiscated, and houses blown up. Palestinian fighters attacked British and Jewish targets, while British and Haganah forces would carry out joint raids on Palestinian villages. Something had to change. The British government sent a commission called the Peel Commission to figure it out, but their proposed solution was typical. Just draw another British line on the map, divide the country, give this part to the Jews and this part to the Palestinians, and make that part of Transjordan next door. Oh, and because the Palestinians were a majority in the country, 250,000 of them would have to be removed by force to make the Jewish state viable. Remember, these were the proposals that were meant to calm things down. Spoiler, they didn't. Instead, the revolt continued until 1939, by which time about 10% of Palestine's adult male population had either been killed, injured, arrested, or exiled. The British government really needed a solution. So, here comes another report.
The Commission is studying the 20-year-old Jewish settlements in British-mandated Palestine.
The 1939 White Paper created a conflict between the British and the Zionists for the first time, because it rejected partition and said the solution was for Palestine to gain independence within 10 years, with everyone living there sharing it together. Crucially, it also imposed severe limits on Jewish land purchases and immigration. To the Zionists, this felt like a betrayal. In response, some set off bombs across the country, killing dozens of Palestinians. But soon, everyone was distracted by something much bigger. More than 60 million people were killed in World War II, including 6 million Jews murdered in Nazi death camps. Jewish survivors fled Europe, with a large number of them trying to find safety in Palestine despite the British limit on Jewish immigration. This set off a more direct confrontation between the Zionists and the British, with Palestinians often targeted as well. The Zionists knew two things. Militarily, they were stronger than the Palestinians.
They just conveniently skipped over something as if it had no weight to it, which is this is the Bella Hadid, their family story. They said that the Jews escaped the Nazis and went to Palestine, a lot of them. Isn't this one of the stories that Bella Hadid's dad tells about his experience growing up, where they actually took some of the Jewish people that were escaping the Holocaust into their homes and then came back and their family like lost their home, pretty much like, yeah, this is our home now? Can we not put ourselves in people's shoes? People are either scared or extremely delusional when it comes to a lot of this stuff. People are either scared or just completely delusional when it comes to a lot of this stuff. And the fear is probably still fueling the delusion, in my opinion, because this is just clear cut. This is just clear cut.
Direct confrontation between the Zionists and the British, with Palestinians often targeted as well. The Zionists knew two things. Militarily, they were stronger than the Palestinians, and Britain was exhausted by World War II, so it wouldn't have the stomach to keep fighting in Palestine. They were right. In 1947, after 30 years of occupation, Britain announced it was quitting Palestine and asked the newly formed United Nations to clean up its mess. Alright, 1947 and 1948 are the most pivotal years in this story, so let's take a look at how things are lining up. During British rule, Jews had gone from 10% to 30% of the population, and owned about 6% of the land. Under Ben-Gurion's leadership...
You know what I'm starting to realize? You ever hear about the stories of the islands? They're either, I think they're off the coast of like Australia or maybe some other islands where there's the indigenous populations that have no contact with outside people. And a lot of like, there's been stories of people trying to get on the land with them and they are killed, you know, for being on the land. And, you know, we'll look at it and say like, oh my God, these savages, like they're just killing people who just were trying to visit their island and see what they live like. This is why they live perhaps in this level of fear. Maybe this is why they're so scared. Maybe this is why they have to live that way, to where they're always thinking that somebody's going to come on their island, conquer, colonize, kill all their men, take their women, do what they want with the kids. Maybe this is why. Maybe this is why. Because it's like, if you don't, we're living in a world where we've seen what happens when the most religious groups, right? The religious groups, those tend to be the ruthless ones, the most religious ones. It's funny how you never see or hear about the groups, the religions that don't even say they're religions, that more align with spirituality, whether it's, I'm not sure if Hinduism is involved in that, but I've never heard of like a bunch of Buddhists, people who practice Buddhism, like going and conquering land and colonizing people. Maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. I've just never heard of these type of groups. It's the religious groups that are the most vicious, are the ones that are setting the standard for how we live in this world. Let's just look at Israel and Palestine. We can all sit here and understand what's going on between Israel and Palestine right now. But one of the things that we never learn about is the Arab slave trade and how vicious that was. Conquering, colonizing, forcing people to change their religion. A lot of these mainstream religions, they've caused more death and have played the role of God and they've done it in the name of God, the most demonic things in this world. They killed off all the spiritual people. People think that religions and spirituality is something that's aligned. It's completely not. It's not aligned at all. And we see it play out because all of the people, like we looked at the story with the Native Americans and the Black, the mountains, Mount Rushmore, what they did with the Native American land that was and they said that it's not even their land, but it's just, something that's very important for them from a spiritual standpoint. And what did we do? We put silly pictures of presidents, engraved silly presidents into the mountains that were how they communicated with their God, how they had their spiritual events and connections of however they practice their spirituality. And we heard the mindset of them saying, like, the land is not to be owned. It's for all of us to live in harmony on it. But then what did we have? We had the religious folk. They came and killed off all the spiritual folk. We're living in a religious world. That's why it's so hard to have true spirituality. We sit here and talk about mental health all the time. We sit here and talk about mental health. No, your soul is sick. That's what it really is. Your soul is sick. You're purposeless. You're living in a soulless society and you're purposeless. You're going to have a mental health disorder, something that we call mental health. You ever wonder why we call it mental health? Like, no, this person's spirit is messed up. All of our spirits are sick. Just look at the world that we're living in. How can we see what's going on with our brothers and sisters, right? We're all one, right? Remember, that's the premise of all this. Have you ever been in a situation where somebody real close to you, a loved one, is going through a real traumatic experience, maybe at war, and you feel that stress, you feel that anxiety? Do we not think that that's the same thing that's happening when there's war and death and destruction and evil things going on in other parts of the world? Do we not think that we're impacted by that? Especially when we're the ones whose guns they're using to kill off people? We need a soul reset. We need a soul reset. You can do all this mental health stuff you want. You can prescribe people all the pills that you want. In all actuality, we have very sick souls right now. And our souls should be sick based on the things that we're looking at and feeling that are happening throughout the world. Let's keep going. Let me change this. All right.
Leadership, the Jewish Agency was pretty much functioning as a government for the Jewish community. And the Zionist militias had tens of thousands of soldiers, modern weapons, and officers who'd already fought in World War II. On the other side, the Palestinians hadn't been allowed to develop their own administration or military. But as they waited for the UN solution, they were still the majority all over the country. In November 1947, the UN, then only made up of a fraction of the world's countries, voted to partition Palestine. This plan marked off 55% of the country for a Jewish state, but the UN never explained how it could be a Jewish state when half the people in its territory were Palestinian. To nobody's surprise, Palestinians, and in fact all Arabs, rejected the UN's plan. Ben-Gurion and the Zionist leadership accepted, but they saw an opportunity. With the British on the way out, the Zionists knew they would have the strongest military in Palestine. Their forces were instructed to seize more territory than they'd been awarded by the UN, and to do what was necessary to reduce the number of Palestinians in it. In cities like Haifa, the militia set off car bombs in Palestinian neighborhoods. They attacked villages and forced residents out.
Haganah troops have driven the Arabs out of the beleaguered city, taking many prisoners.
After inspecting parts of western Jerusalem that had been emptied of Palestinians, Ben-Gurion said,
"In many Arab neighborhoods in the West, you do not see even one Arab. If we persist, it is quite possible that in the next 6 or 8 months there will be considerable changes in the country, and to our advantage."
One of the events that helped speed up these changes took place on April 9th, 1948, when the village of Dir Yassin was attacked. A British government report to the United Nations describes the scene. 250 people were killed in circumstances of great savagery. Women and children were stripped, lined up, photographed, and then slaughtered by automatic firing. The story of what happened at Dir Yassin set off panic all over the country. As news spread, people fled, fearing they would be next. Historians have recorded dozens of similar massacres during this period. Each time, they would result in entire communities fleeing.
תמיד הייתה הוראה של בן גוריון לגרש את האנשים משם. כבשנו את המקום, טרקטורים חרשו את המקום. חרשו. לא נשאר זכר של כפר. למה? לא רצו שתהיה, לא חזרה ולא זכר של המקום.
By the time Britain ended its mandate on May 15th, 1948, 250,000 Palestinians had fled. The night before, David Ben-Gurion announced the founding of the State of Israel, with himself as its first prime minister. He was standing under a giant portrait of Herzl, 51 years after Herzl had predicted this very moment. The Zionist militias came together as the newly formed Israel Defense Forces, but the fighting wasn't over. With the British out of the way, soldiers from several Arab countries entered Palestine. But the Israeli army was better equipped, better organized, and unlike the Arab armies, had a unified command and backing from several European countries. Israeli forces pushed into places that the UN had assigned to the Palestinian state, like the towns of Lidda and Ramle. 50,000 people were forced to flee from there, many on foot, in what became known as the Lidda Death March. After being emptied, the towns were given Hebrew names, Lod and Ramla. Like in many other emptied towns, the buildings and homes were taken over by the new Israeli state and given to Jews. By the time the UN secured an armistice, 3/4 of the Palestinian people had become refugees. In Arabic, they call this the Nakba, literally the catastrophe. The new state of Israel made up 78% of what had been Palestine. The remaining parts were annexed by Jordan or taken over by Egypt. A year later, the UN passed a resolution calling for all Palestinian refugees to be allowed to return home. They never have been. Palestine had been erased. In the decades since, attempts to resolve this conflict have again tried to partition the land. With each successive attempt, the territory offered to Palestinians in their historic homeland shrinks even more. Ironically, Israel is still struggling to maintain the population advantage it gained in 1948 when it forced all those people out, because in 1967, it occupied the West Bank and Gaza, bringing all the Palestinians living there under its rule. And so today, the population of Jews and non-Jews in this land is roughly equal. But those living under occupation have no rights, no citizenship, and no prospect of independence. The Nakba-era tactics of settlement, home demolitions, and expulsion are still used against them.
Nakba, Nakba, no! We want Nakba, Nakba, no!
Israel has taken the land but wants nothing to do with the millions under its rule. International, Israeli, and Palestinian human rights groups say this system is a form of apartheid. To see if that's an accurate description of Israel more than 100 years after Balfour's promise, watch this video here.
As much as I'd like to, we can't watch that one. We can't watch it. Oh, man. Oh, boy. It's crazy how we got here, man. It's I'm telling y'all, man, these videos, I don't know how you can hear these videos, listen to what's going on, and just not be driven to do something, or at least to at least not to formulate your own perspective on it. What we're seeing occur, and maybe this has always been a situation where, I don't know, maybe people don't, like, do people really believe that there's going to be a judgment day? So like all these actions, do we think that if I just ignore it and don't learn anything about it, so that way I don't feel forced or the need to comment on something, then yeah, I won't be graded on that. It's like I'm only going to be graded on the stuff that I decide to give my attention to. This is why like all this religious stuff, it's all just BS to me. The most religious people, y'all are not living by that. How are you not standing on principles? How are you not the ones that are willing to speak out on certain things that you know are evil and demonic, no matter what side of it you lean on? Let's just look at it. Forget sides out of it. Take sides out of it. Just look at the region and say, yo, why are all these people dying? This is not okay. And these things are being done in the name of religion. Let's go to this video. This was actually Nelson Mandela at City College. Cool video. Nelson Mandela, I guess he was getting pressed because he's supported the Palestine Liberation Organization and their leader Yasser Arafat and this Palestinian struggle for self-determination. And a lot of people had some questions to ask him and felt, I guess, disrespected that he would follow or support, I should say, this Palestinian organization. So let's look at this video. I think it's a good video for us to check out. And you guys let me know your thoughts on it, of course, as we're going through. All right, you guys should be seeing it on your end. Let's go. Make sure y'all are liking and subscribing. Y'all know the drill by now.
Tonight, the issues and the controversy. 1,000 people have gathered at the City College of New York for a town meeting with Nelson Mandela. Mr. Mandela, you're participating in what is a very old and honorable American tradition, the town meeting. And rather than waste any time with my questions, if they don't ask you good ones, I promise I will try to.
So it says one of the first questions to Nelson Mandela, just in case people aren't watching, is on his relationship with and support for the Palestinian leader, Yasser Arafat. I need to do more research.
Those of us who share your struggle for human rights and against apartheid have been somewhat disappointed by the models of human rights that you have held up since being released in jail. You've met over the last 6 months 3 times with Yasser Arafat. Are these your models of leaders of human rights? And if so, would you want a Gaddafi or an Arafat or a Castro to be a future president of South Africa?
Let me run the question back again.
Those of us who share your struggle for human rights and against apartheid have been somewhat disappointed by the models of human rights that you have held up since being released in jail. You've met over the last 6 months 3 times with Yasser Arafat. Are these your models of leaders of human rights? And if so, would you want a Gaddafi or an Arafat or a Castro to be a future president of South Africa?
One of the mistakes which some political analysts make is to think that their enemies should be our enemies.
Now, I'm going to be honest. I don't know if they cut out some of it, but pretty much based on me watching the video, and you guys will see it as you go through. But I believe what Nelson Mandela is saying is that just because that's your enemy doesn't mean that that should automatically be my enemy. Just because Israel has certain enemies with certain groups does not mean that I'm forced for that to be an enemy of mine. I believe that's what he's saying.
Our attitude towards any country is determined by the attitude of that country to our struggle. Yasser Arafat, Colonel Gaddafi, Fidel Castro support our struggle to the hilt.
So it's so funny because Arafat, Gaddafi, who else did he mention? And Castro. 3 people that we grew up in America thinking are evil people, right? For different reasons. It's interesting to hear Nelson Mandela speaking on them this way. And perhaps this is why Nelson Mandela is so impactful and why it's so important to, like, as I'm listening to him speak, Nelson Mandela, what he's saying holds a lot of weight, but I always looked at him as just a nice, easygoing, soft-spoken guy. But the stuff that he's standing on it's like it's giving me a lesson in communication, actually, just to kind of give y'all some insight of what's going on in my head. But you hear Nelson Mandela, who I don't know of anybody that, like, I've never really heard anybody say, I can't stand Nelson Mandela. I hate Nelson Mandela. He's a terrorist. Now, I'm sure, obviously, at the time when he was getting locked up, there's a lot of people that did not like Nelson Mandela, but I don't hear a lot of that right now. So to me, a light goes off and says, maybe I need to go back and do some due diligence on Castro and what I was told, indoctrinated, when it came to Castro, just like Gaddafi. And I've done it with Gaddafi, and that's proven to be, it's proven to show, like what's going on in Burkina Faso, how they don't like certain leaders. European colonizers, let's just call it what it is. The European powers don't like stand up, strong, independent African leaders. Is what it is. Let's keep going.
They do not support it only in rhetoric. They are placing resources at our disposal for us to win this battle. That is the position.
Mr. Mandela, as I mentioned to you before the program, we also have some distinguished guests sitting behind us. One of whom, Mr. Henry Sigmund, together with two other Jewish leaders, came to Geneva to visit with you precisely because they were so concerned not only by the kind of thing that you just said before the break with regard to Yasser Arafat, with regard to Libya's Colonel Gaddafi, but also because of the support that you seemed at different times to give to the PLO. I would like to ask Mr. Sigmund to stand now for a moment and pose whatever question he would like directly to you. Mr. Sigmund?
I think I would be dishonest if I did not express profound disappointment with the answer that Mr. Mandela gave to the previous question, because it suggests a certain degree of amorality.
As far as Yasser Arafat is concerned, I explained to Mr. Sigmund that we identify with the PLO because just like ourselves, they are fighting for the right of self-determination.
Mr. Mandela.
History repeats itself, man.
We have ripped through the first part of this broadcast extraordinarily quickly. There are still a number of issues that we have to take up with Mr. Mandela, not the least of them being sanctions by the United States against South Africa.
All right, this is what we're going to do. We're going to hold off on this. I told myself that we'd be out of here by 11. This is what we're going to do. We're going to, selfishly, I want our Friday group to make sure that we're locked in on this, because I think this is just a good conversation that needs to be had. So let's do this. Let's wrap up today. And I want to finish off exactly how we started by emphasizing, let me actually take this down, by emphasizing that, hey, all of these, no matter whether it's Israelis, Palestinians, they're our brothers and sisters. And a lot of times when our brothers and sisters are fighting, rather than just jumping in and picking a side and being radicalized, sometimes the mature thing is to say, hey, let's pull everybody apart. Let's figure out a way for us to resolve this. Right now, you may not look at that. I wouldn't look at that. Like if I'm with my bro, and we're in a bar and, you know, something happens to whatever, I'm not going to be asking questions trying to, you know, hey, well, that's a different type of situation because I'm not looking at those other people as my brothers. Now, if they were my brothers, I would be looking at it differently, just like I'm explaining to y'all right now. We have to look at the rest of humanity as our brothers and sisters. Matter of fact, we don't have to do anything. We don't have to do anything. Let me be very clear on that. But I can't think of a solution that would help us have peace and live in harmony more than us seeing each other as brothers and sisters. I just don't see another answer. If there's another answer out there, please let me know it. And I'll process it. And if it makes sense, I'll push that too. Or maybe just push that. But I can't see anything else. You know, we have a humanity issue. And it's the lack of caring, you know, for our fellow humans. That's what I really think is the issue. And you don't care about people that you think aren't in your group. So we have these identities, like I started off earlier today on the show, that we prioritize above our godly identities as human beings. All right. That's what God put us as, that identity. This is your species. But we prioritize all this other stuff that creates more division, more chaos, rather than bringing about unity and bringing us together to live in harmony. When it's your brothers and your sisters, you figure out a way to resolve problems rather than just condoning war and just saying to the victor, go the spoils. It's different when it's your brother and your sister. Because what happens when the family fights? Everybody loses, right? So what happens when our fellow humans fight? All of humanity loses. Next thing you know, we're looking for an ark like Noah's to build, because nature, our other godly brethren, is reacting in a way to cleanse certain things that we have decided to not cleanse ourselves. But that's just my take on it. But y'all know what we do at the end of every show, 45 seconds, especially since we're getting ready to go to sleep, hopefully, or depending on where you're tuning in from. But we take 45 seconds to clear our mind, meditate, manifest, do whatever it is that you need. Every exhale, let that exhale represent all the negative energy leaving your body, and every inhale representing positive energy, positive mindset, positive frequency. So eventually we're just recirculating positive vibes, positive energy. So let's take 45 seconds. Keep your eyes open, keep them closed, whatever it is that you feel is best. I'll be closing mine, but let's start now. Ready? Begin. Whew. All right, one last exhale. I almost fell asleep, man. One last exhale, releasing all that negative energy. Give me one more. Inhale, one last exhale. Releasing all that negative. Inhaling nothing but positive vibes, positive energy. Y'all know we come here to do elevate on purpose, both from an intentional standpoint as well as challenging ourselves to raise our standards, to become the best leaders we can become that are needed now more than ever, as we can clearly see, and challenging ourselves to grow into the people that we need to grow into in order to accomplish a lot of these audacious goals, arrogant goals to some people, whatever it is, these big goals that we have for ourselves, and knowing that we're willing to sacrifice the needed time, effort, energy, whatever it takes in order to do so. Strength and honor, onward and upward. Y'all know what it is when I say get to that bag. For those that don't, all the things that we're doing along the way that are going to add up and make sure that we're in proper alignment with achieving purposeful abundance and making sure that we're living in that purpose, choosing the right purpose. Maybe that's the first step. Choosing the right purpose, being aware and having clarity to know that we could choose the right purpose, something that's willing, that we're willing to commit to, and that is worth committing to. So when I say get to the bag, you got to figure that out on your own, back into it. What's going to be your purpose? What's going to be your personal legend that you leave, that impact on the world that you're going to make? The things that I focus on: peace, love, happiness, health, wealth, and in everything we do, integrity. And on that note, enjoy the rest of your evening. Appreciate y'all tapping in with me. Love always, and we'll see y'all Friday. All right. See, I've got a quick turnaround Friday morning, Friday a.m. at 8 a.m. We'll see y'all soon. Appreciate y'all. Love y'all. See y'all soon. Ew.